Good morning. Today is Sunday. Chav Daled, Chav Hey, Ir. Chav Hey, Ir, right? Tov Shnayin Daled. We're in Sefer Mamar Chamisha Kinyanim, Tov Shnayin Beis. In the Mamar of Shabbos Pashas Bamidbar, Mevorchem HaChodesh and Erevresh Chodesh Sivan. Very timely and appropriate, because yesterday was Shabbos Mevorchem Sivan. And we're in the Mamar Chamisha Kinyanim. We are on page Reish Pei Hey, at the beginning of the paragraph at the bottom, V'ho'inyan. The Rebbe is explaining the idea of the 5 acquisitions that Hashem acquired in His world. The Mishnah in Perek Vov of Pirkei Avos. And the Rebbe explains the concept of Kinyan, acquisition. That there is the idea of Atzilis, which comes into being in a state of kinyan. And we said it was a noun, yes? Kinyan as a noun. That it's in a state of kinyan. It means
it could be. You said it could be both.
So Atzilus is kinyan, in a state of kinyan. It means that it is acquired. It's in a state of being acquired by Hashem. It's initially like that. It's only the Gilei HaHelim to reveals that which was before in a revealed way. Before it was concealed, now it's revealed. Whereas the other things that the Mishnah enumerates, that there are things in the world that we need to acquire, that need to be acquired. It means to say it needs to be moved from one domain into another domain. It needs to be moved from the domain which is separate from Kedusha into the domain of Kedusha. And then I've explained that in the Kinyan there are 2 aspects, Meshicha and Kesef, drawing the object and exchange of money. In Ruchnius, it's the idea of Kesef is the idea of Ahava, love, right? And the Rebbe explained that there's a machlekes between Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yechanan, whether Meshicha is a biblical institution or it's something that the Chachamim instituted, and really from the biblical perspective, the exchange of money is sufficient. Rish Lakish holds that you need both. Rish Lakish holds that when you draw the object, from the Torah's perspective, once you draw the object into your domain, it becomes yours and now you become obligated to pay for the object. And Rabbi Yechanan holds no, that from the Torah's perspective, the exchange of money is sufficient. That once you hand over the money, even if it remains in the domain of the seller, it becomes yours. But in order to encourage the seller to be particular about those goods, so that if there's a danger that they might get destroyed or damaged, the Chachamim instituted that you need to draw the object into your domain in order for it to become yours. In other words, that according to Rabbi Yechanan, the Chachamim instituted that the sale should not be complete until the object is actually drawn into the domain of the buyer, of the purchaser.
And when you lift up something, that's like the same as drawing it.
That's an andere Sache.
Yeah?
Yeah. No, that's Kinyan Sudar. That's when you it's a tichel. It's different. This Kinyan Agav, Kinyan Sudar. There's also some Kinyanim. Yeah. Here he's focusing on the Kinyan of Kinyan Kesef and Meshicha. So in Ruchni, as the Rebbe explained, that Meshicha is Isrusah L'Sata, the awakening from below. Right? The effort from the person below. And Kesef is the idea of the bestowal of Hashem's love on the individual, giving him the strength. The Rebbe said in 2 ways. There is the Kesef, the love, the giving the person the strength, the Surusah L'Eila, the awakening from above, which precedes the awakening from below, which gives the person the koyach to awaken and lift himself up. And then there's the Surusah L'Eila that follows the Surusah L'Sata. There's the initiative and the bestowal from above that follows the person's effort as a result, or as a gift, if you will, as a result of the person's effort from below. So there is the Kesef that precedes the Meshicha, and there's the Kesef that follows the Meshicha. There's the Kesef, the Surusah L'Eila, the awakening from above, that precedes the Meshicha, the awakening from below. And then there's the Kesef, the awakening from above, which follows the Meshicha, the awakening from below, the Surusah L'Sata. What was the pshat? So the Rebbe explains like this. That's where we're up to. Page Reish Pei Hey. The Rebbe Now explains this. Page Reish Behe at the bottom. The idea in this is as follows: Shebe'ahava, in love, kesef, which we refer to here as kesef, right? From the expression of nichsef nichsafti, from the yidid nefesh. So be'ahava gufa yeshnam beis dargis. In ava alone, in ava itself, you have two levels. In other words, not only are there two levels, mishicha and kesef. In kesef itself, in the love, in the yisrusa de le'ela, in the bestowal from above, there are two levels: ahava zuta and ahava rabba. The small love and the big love. Generally speaking, when we talk about zuta and rabba, right, in ruchnius, in the upper realms. So, for example, when you talk about the midas of atzilus, what are they called? Ze'er ampin. Ze'er means small, the small face. Then we know that there's something called what? Arich ampin, the long face or the big face. What's that? That's the external aspect of keser. Where is that? That's beyond atzilus. So generally, when you talk about ze'er, it's that which follows the moichin, which follows the intellect, or rather, that is what is within the realm of hishtalshalus, within the realm of the structure, the internal structure, the inner structure, and then you have rabba, which is beyond the inner structure. That's ze'er ampin and arich ampin, right? So similarly here, when we say ava rabba and ava zuta, or ava zuta and ava zuta is the small love, which means it's the love that follows from intellect, from contemplation, from focusing on these ideas, and one is awakened with love. So that's a small love because it's confined to the extent, it's limited to the extent of one's perception and one's contemplations, right? Then you have ava rabba, which is beyond the intellect, it's higher. It's not limited in that sense. It doesn't emanate from the intellect, it's from higher. So the Rebbe explains, in love alone you have two levels, ava zuta, the small love, ava rabba, and the big love. Ava zuta, the small love, that's love which is in accordance with reason and knowledge, with intellect, rationality. And when a person contemplates that godliness is something good. And through this, love is born in the person's heart. Page top of Reish Pei Vav. This love is measured and limited. Why? Because since this is a love which was born how? Through the comprehension of the intellect, the intellectual comprehension. It follows, therefore, that this love is limited in accordance with the intellect that gives birth to it, that causes it to be born. Umagam, that's one reason why it's limited. Umagam, another reason, since intellectual comprehension, it can only be in levels of godliness that clothe themselves in the world. And this level of godliness, the level of godliness that clothes itself in the world, is in a limit, in a measure, and in a limit. Therefore, what? Therefore, the love that follows from such contemplation is what? Is limited. And therefore, in this type of love, at this level of love, of Ava, you cannot experience the idea of the expiration of the soul. Loving Hashem to such an extent that the soul expires means that it's beyond limits. The person can't be contained. It's limitless. That's why the soul expires. From a limited love, you can't come to that level. You can't expire. Why? Because it's limited.
Why isn't it the goof expires?
The neshama leaves the guf. The neshama, that's the klei nefesh. It's drawn to its source. So the guf remains where it is. So therefore, from a limited love, which comes from hasagas haseichel, comprehension of the intellect, you can't reach the level of klei nefesh. Because the klei nefesh, the expiration of the soul, is beyond measure and limit. That's number one. Another reason why you can't come to klei nefesh, to the expiration of the soul, is because what is the person contemplating, which causes him to have the sense of love to Hashem? He contemplates that godliness is good for him. So in other words, what is he focused on? He's focused on the godliness, how it is good for him. How is it good for the person? Is it good for the person that a soul expires from the body? No, on the contrary. You're focusing in that godliness is good for the person, in the confines of the person, in the limits of the person as he is, meaning the soul and the body. As it says in Pashas Nitzavim that you should remember Hashem and so on and so forth, because He is your life. In other words, on the contrary, we're talking about the opposite of Kleis Nefesh. So therefore, automatically, the idea of the expiration of the soul has no association here. Because Kleis Nefesh is something which is beyond the person's being, going out of your being, superseding your being. That's Ahavazuta. So Ahavazuta, the small love, emanates from what? From his bonus, and it's focused on levels of godliness that are limited, and it's focused on how godliness is good for me. The Ahavarabe, what about the big love, the great love? This is a reference to love, which is beyond reason, beyond intellect, beyond rationality. This is something that comes from above. Which means what? It's something that a person cannot attain through his internal faculties. Why? Because the person is limited. And you're talking now about a love which is beyond that. So where does that come from? It comes from above. It's bestowed on the person. Hainu. This means, after the person completes his service of Hashem, his work, he does what he can. Ad mokim shiur magas, to the extent that he can reach in love which is according to rationality and reason. So when a person extends himself to the degree that he's able, azayin magia, he reaches la'ahavarabe, he reaches the level of the great love shelamayla matamadas, which is beyond rationality. How? This is drawn down from above, mitzad ha'ava atzmis, because of the essential love that Kadosh Baruch Hu l'bnei Yisrael of Kadosh Baruch Hu to the Yidden. So in other words, it's not something which is dependent on any contemplations, on any levels. It's essential between Hashem and the Jewish people, and therefore, because it's essential, it's beyond everything. It's from Hashem's essence to the Yid's essence, to a Yid's essence. Val Yoda, when it's bestowed upon the Yid, this essential love, through this, it is awakened in the person's heart, the hidden love, which is B'teva Kol Yisrael Mitul Dosam, which every Jew possesses naturally from his birth. It's something that's there. This is love which is beyond reason and beyond rationality, and beyond any measure and beyond any limit. Then the Rebbe goes on and says, in this love itself, in the love of what? Which love? The level of Ahavarabe, which is beyond rationality, beyond limit. There are two modes. Ahava, which is like fire, like tongues of fire. In a way of thirst from below to above. But then there's love, pleasurable love, which is from above to below. This is the Rebbe quotes over here from the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe's Siddur, the Maimer, in I think it's the Shar B'chas HaMozen. And over there he explains these two levels of love, these levels that are beyond, in other words, in the Ahavarabe itself, in the level of love, which is beyond the person's limits. He explains that there are two levels. There's bligvul, there's limitless, but not expiration. You just love limit with the love is limitless, but it's not yet Kleis HaNefesh. That is Ava Kirish Peyesh. But then there are Ava B'tanugim, where it causes the person to expire. So both of them are what? In the bracket of Ahavarabe, but there are degrees in limitlessness, as it were. One is limitless, but not Kleis HaNefesh. The higher one is what? Limitless and Kleis HaNefesh. So the first one is Mamata L'mayla, the second one is Mamata L'mata. So now going back, though, to what we're discussing here generally. Generally, the Rebbe is delineating the difference between Ahavazut and Ahavarabe. He just obliquely says that in Ahavarabe itself you have two. But over here we're going back now. I'm going back to these two levels of love. Ahavazut and Ahavarabe, the small love and the big love. These are connected to the two modes that we explained before in Kesef. Why? The Rebbe explained before that there is the Kesef, which is what? The bestowal from above, the awakening from above, the initiative from above. So there's the Kesef before the Mashiach, which would be Rabbi Yochanan's position, that you hand over the money and then there's a drawing. And then there's the Kesef that follows the Mashiach, which would be the Shlakish's position, that you draw it and then you become obligated to pay the money. So, as mentioned before, the Rebbe Chassidus combines these two opinions, meaning to say that there is a situation where Kesef precedes Meshicha, and there is a situation where Kesef follows Meshicha. What does that mean? These two levels of Ava Zut and Ava Rabbe, are connected to the two modes of Kesef. Kesef, the money or the love, which is another way of saying the awakening from above, which precedes the awakening from below, the initiative from below. And then there's another mode of Kesef. The awakening from above, the initiative from above, which follows after and comes through as a result of the awakening from below. So these two levels of love, Avarazut and Avarab, are connected with these two modes of Kesef. The one that precedes the awakening from below and the one that follows the awakening from below. The awakening from above, which precedes the awakening from below, which is what? Kesef shalifnei HaMashiach, the Kesef, the money which is before the drawing, the love which precedes the awakening from below. This causes the person to be able to do his Aveda in order to reach the love which he can reach through his contemplation, the limited level of love. Which is the level of the small love. And through the awakening from above, which follows the awakening from below, which is what? Kesef shalachar meshicha, the money that follows the drawing of the object, the love that follows the person's effort. So this brings about the love which is beyond reason and beyond rationality, the great love. Right? So this is the idea of Kesef and Meshicha. According to the Shlakish Yerubichin's opinion, the Kesef that precedes the Meshicha. According to the Shlakish's opinion, the Kesef that follows the Meshicha, which is the Serusa de Le'ela, which precedes the Serusa de L'Sata, and the Serusa de Le'ela that follows the Serusa de L'Sata. So there is that aspect from above, and then there's also what that aspect from above allows the person to reach. So the Kesef that precedes the Meshicha allows the person to take the initiative and reach what? The level of love which he can reach only insofar as his effort is concerned. The limited Abazuta. But once he's done that, there's then the Kesef Shalachar Meshicha, there's another Isrus Leila that follows that, which allows the person to link into what? To the level of Avarabba. And as the Rebbe obliquely pointed out, that in Avarabba itself, you have the two levels of Kirish Be'esh, which is Blikvul but not Kleisa Nefesh, and then you have the Tanugim, the highest level, which is up to even Kleisa Nefesh. Another few lines. Chapter 4. So now, let's go, now we know what Kinyan is. Now let's start enumerating the aspects that the Mishnah says. There's Torah, Shemayim Va'aretz, Yisrael, Torah, etc., etc. V'hinei, chapter 4. Ba'kinyanim shekana HaKadosh Baruch Hu be'elamei, choshiv tchila Torah k'dinecha. The first acquisition that Hashem acquires in His world, the first one He focuses on is what? Torah. Torah is an acquisition. V'nizboyer li'il sif aleph, we explained earlier in chapter 1, Shezeu mashalpaim shana kadma Torah le'elam. The Rebbe said, over there, if you remember in chapter 1, he said it's not chronological. The world was created first, the Torah was given later. But since Torah in level precedes the world, is at a higher level than the world, as it says, that the Torah precedes the world by 2,000 years, which means 2,000 levels, right? Why? As the Rebbe is going to explain in a minute, and as every Bar Mitzvah Bacher says in the Maimer, because the world is created through what? Through Midas. 6 midas. That's why Hashem created the world in 6 days. Torah is Alpayim Shana. It's Chacham Bina. Torah comes from Meichin, from the level of the intellectual faculties, the intellectual attributes. So Torah precedes the world in level, right? So that's why even though chronologically the world was created first, but in level Torah is higher. Then it's better. We explained earlier in chapter 1. Why does he first mention Torah? That's because Torah precedes the world by 2,000 years. What does that mean? What does that mean in the spiritual sense? Because the creation of the world is from the aspects of midas, of the emotional attributes of Atzilus. It says in the verse, remember your mercy and your kindness, for they are they're there forever. And Chassidus explains that what does it mean, for they are of the world, right? Which are what? The midas. Chesed, Rachmim, these are midas. They are associated with the world. Uksiv, and it also says in the pasuk in Tehillim, Ki amarti olam chesed yibana. For I said, the world will be built upon kindness. But what does it mean in the more deeper sense? That chesed, the midas, are associated with the world. So in other words, the world, creation of the world, is connected to what? Emanates from what? From the emotional attributes of Atzilus. Whereas Torah is from the aspect of Mechin, from the intellectual aspects of Atzilus. Therefore it precedes the world. This is the meaning of this Mishnah. That there are 5 acquisitions that Hashem acquired in His world.
Sorry, why 2,000?
So it says in the mitzvah, remember, because Alpaim is from the expression of Aleph Chochma, Aleph Chabina. I will teach you wisdom, I will teach you understanding. Which is, again...
The idea of 10 at each, for Chochma Bina, the multiple of 10, because they each give birth to the 10 midas, the 10 svitas.
Yeah.
But why
Alpaim?
1,000? Yeah.
Well, that shows ultimate shleimus. 1,000 really is connected to Keser. 100 is connected to intellect. When you say 1,000, it's Keser. So you're talking about Torah at its ultimate level.
Why is 1,000 connected to Keser?
We learned it already. I don't remember offhand now. We mentioned it in one of the previous Mamarim. We learned it. We never referred to it in one of the previous Mamarim as well. But that's the Nekuda. That we're talking about, when you say Alpayim, 2,000 years, it's, as it says in the Mamar Chamisha Kinyanim, Aleph Chochma, Aleph Chabina, it's from the expression of teaching Chochma and teaching Bina. Aleph is from the expression of teaching. The general idea, meaning that it's connected to Mechin, it's connected to the intellectual faculties. Whereas Welt is connected, the world is connected to what? The emotional faculties. Yeah. So it's higher than it, right? So he says like this. So this is now, how does the Rebbe Taiches now defines the Mishnah in accordance with this meaning, that Torah is related to the Mechin, right? And it precedes the world. This is the meaning of this expression in the Mishnah, that there are 5 acquisitions that Hashem acquired in His world. And he says what? Torah is acquisition one, is one of those, one acquisition. So the Rebbe teaches, shetzarich lahamshich Torah, shebebchinas hamechin gimel rishonos be'olam. We have to draw down Torah, which emanates from where? From the aspects of the intellectual faculties, the 3 first ones, meaning the 3 first attributes. We have to draw that down where? Ba'elam, into the world. She'isavusim b'chinas hamidus, which is created, the world, which is created from what? From the aspects of the midas, from the emotional faculties. So according to this taich, it means that through drawing down Torah, which is from Mechin, into the world, which is from midas, that causes the acquisition. In whom? In Welt. That the world should be lifted into the domain, into the private domain, or into the domain of the only one, as the Rebbe Taish before, which is what Liyas Elam Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that it should be Hashem's world. Then he carries on also and he says, the heavens and the earth are one of the acquisitions. Right? So Chamisha Kinyanim Kana Kadosh Baruch Hu Ba'olamai means what? Torah Kinyan Echad. So you draw down Torah into the world, and that causes the world to be drawn to become a Kinyan. Later the Rebbe is going to focus on what does it mean Torah itself has to be acquired. It seems that Torah itself is one of those things that you have to move from one domain to another. But so that's a deeper. We'll get to that in a minute. Just want to finish the os. Then we move on from there and we say that you draw it also down into the heavens and to the earth. That the Torah causes the kinyan, the acquisition, also in the heavens and the earth. That they are elevated to the domain, the private domain, or the domain of the Eibishter, that it should be the world of Hashem.